This is an All Ears English podcast, episode 498, why you should be sensitive to and sensible about these false friends.
Welcome to the All Ears English podcast, downloaded more than 16 million times. We believe in connection, not perfection, with your American hosts, Lindsay McMahon, the English adventurer, and Michelle Kaplan, the New York radio girl, coming to you from Boston and New York City, USA. And to instantly download your transcript from today's episode, go to allearsenglish.com/transcripts. allearsenglish.com/transcripts. Today, learn about the differences between sensible and sensitive in English and find out how to stop confusing these two words when you translate from your native language. Plus, find out how to choose a romantic partner. The only way to become fluent in English is to practice it. And it's even better to practice it with a native teacher. Go to allearsenglish.com/ITALKI to get your native teacher online in seconds. See you there. What's up, Michelle? How you doing?
Hey, Lindsay. I'm pretty good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm excited to talk today about one of our favorite topics because there are just so many of these. You know, sometimes all friends cannot be trusted. Is that true? Do you agree with that? Have you had problems with untrustworthy friends?
It happens. It happens. What about you?
Well, you know, in my life, like, people have to pass certain tests to become my friend. So I have a certain screening process to make sure that I don't have any false friends in my life. Right?
Oh, boy.
So, guys, today, as you know, on All Ears English, we like to talk about false friends. And today we're going to talk about one that's particularly deceiving. Okay. And this false friend is the word, well, two words, right? Confusion between the words sensible and sensitive. And I used to speak Spanish, and I know that I would get very confused with these two words, the differences in English and Spanish. And I know this happens for Portuguese speakers because we had a listener ask us a question about this on our blog. So we want to talk about this today.
Okay, awesome. I like these false friends, you know, because it really can get very confusing, and time to not be confused.
Time to not be confused, especially for our listeners at their level. It's time to break through this confusion. And guys, we just can't assume that a word is translated, you know, exactly the same. You know, sometimes we just can't do that when it comes. At your level, we want to move beyond false friends and start to get smarter about this. So, all right, Michelle. So here's the deal. Here's the problem. When I speak Spanish, the word sensible, right, means sensitive in English, right? That's the problem. And I think in Portuguese, I don't speak Portuguese, so I can't pronounce it, but I think it's something similar. Okay.
Right.
But it's spelled, you know, sensible, if I'm correct in Spanish. Now, that same word, sensible, is not the same word, but it's, you know, the English sounding version of it. Sensible in English. What does that mean?
That means like smart or logical, right? So it could describe a person or a decision, right? So like, he's a sensible guy. I'm sure he'll think this through before making a decision.
Exactly. So we see what the problem is here. I mean, these potentially could be, they're not necessarily opposite, but they could be opposite, right? And we're going to talk about that a little bit when it comes to finding a partner, right? A life partner, right?
I mean, you could also say, I think you made a sensible decision to apply for a safety school as well as a few reach schools, right? So like, two different ways to use sensible.
Exactly. So sensible can be used in English to describe a person or a decision, but basically what it means is just something or someone who thinks through things in a very smart and logical way, whereas the word sensitive is very different, right? What does that mean in English, Michelle? Sensitive.
Like, you know, that you might be like a little bit emotional. You're maybe like a little bit of a softie.
Yeah, softie. I like that one. I like that one.
Yeah,
softie.
like you you might be like very, very empathetic or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. So we can see what the problem is here, right? And this could be really confusing, guys. So let's break it down, Michelle. What are some other ways? So we have the word sensitive in English, and Michelle's just shown us that it means someone who, feels a lot, right? That's one way we could talk about someone who's sensitive. They feel a lot. Right? What are some other terms that we could use to describe someone who is sensitive?
Right. Well, I think I said a little bit earlier, emotional, right? That's another way you could use. I mean, it's interesting because would you say when you hear somebody's sensitive, do you think it's a good thing or a bad thing?
This is tricky. I think it's, it could be both. It could be both.
Exactly.
You talk about, it depends on the context, right? For example, at work, I could see how it could be good to be sensitive because, for example, a charismatic person, we talk about this in the Charismatic Connector, right? Our new course. If you're interested in that, guys, go to allearsenglish.com/charisma. But anyways, in that course, guys, we talk about the skills of building charisma. And a lot of them are linked to being sensitive, right? It's empathy. It's, circling back to what people have talked about, checking in on them, responding in a way that shows you're listening. Those are very sensitive skills. But
right. I think that's the difference between being sensitive to others and yourself being sensitive.
Oh, I see.
Right? Like, I think it's good to be sensitive to others' needs, to others' emotions, I think it can be a very good way to connect is to be sensitive. But I think if you yourself are sensitive, you would still say it in the same way. Like, you're a sensitive person. It could mean to others or to yourself. But if you're thinking only about yourself, then that's when you get insulted easily, offended, maybe you can't take criticism, right?
That's a good question. I mean, the question becomes, is it possible to do one and not the other, right? Because, I guess it is, but I think inherently someone who is sensitive to others has to feel something deeply themselves because they understand how the other person's feeling, right? But what you're saying, Michelle, makes sense because the ability to be centered in your kind of grounded and centered, being strong, but understanding when to show emotion too. I mean, yeah. So this is a deeper debate, I guess, or a deeper conversation.
I don't know. I got so interested in it. All right. Thanks for being sensitive to my questions, Lindsay.
Yeah. I think overall it's a good thing. That's my opinion. I think being sensitive is a good thing.
I think so too. I think I'm a sensitive person.
I think you are too. I mean, the examples of where it would be bad, for example, if you are, if you work in the ER and you're starting to cry every time you see someone coming in with blood, like that's not good. That's not useful. That's not helpful.
That's why I can't work in the ER.
Yeah, me neither. So, okay. Yeah.
Anyway.
So someone who's sensitive feels a lot. They're emotional. They wear their heart on their sleeve, right? So do you use that expression, Michelle?
Yeah. I like that one because it gives me like a cute little image.
Yeah.
Although it could be
they can't hide what they're feeling, right?
Yeah.
I mean, a crier, right? A softie.
Crier.
Yep. Guys, hundreds of All Ears English listeners have already taken advantage of our special deal, which is that you get $10 off your second lesson with a native speaker at italki. The best way to move to the next level is to stop making those common mistakes. Go to allearsenglish.com/ITALKI and find your native speaking partner now. See you there. Or what's the last one?
The last one is to be in touch with one's emotions.
Yeah, someone someone who's in touch with their emotions. I mean, it's really bad when you're about to cry and you don't want to cry and you can't hold it in. Do you know that feeling?
Yeah, and then but the worst is if somebody says, "Are you okay?"
Oh, and then you start crying, right?
Yeah, I remember it happened to me once because I was a waitress and we had I had a really difficult customer and I was just having a terrible time and I was trying not to cry. I call it blinking back the tears, and I'm not like a huge crier, but I just happened and I don't often just cry in the workplace, but it happened to be that waitressing was a little bit tough at that point.
Oh, yeah.
And when you have a difficult customer or somebody who's bothering you, it can be very hard. So at that point, I was about to cry, and my manager came over to me and said, "Are you okay?" And it was just waterworks.
Yeah. I can understand, Michelle, how that would make you cry. I mean, that's a very high pressured situation, especially if you're young. Were you like 18 or 20 or something?
Yeah, I think I was 18 or 19. Yeah, like it's not something that I don't even know if I've ever cried at work since, but at this, for some reason.
Well, it's interesting how, as we get a little bit older, we build like this shell around us. So I think we're less likely to cry, but certain situations still trigger us,
Right.
And I could see, I worked as a waitress too. I'm sure I cried a few times. It's a scary thing. So guys, that in English, if we're talking about the English language here, that is sensitive, right? Sensitive is someone who feels a lot, who's emotional, who's a crier. Now let's move on to sensible, right? Someone who is sensible. And what does that mean? Michelle, what are some other ways to say that?
Well, I like this one, to have a good head on one's shoulder. I like that.
Exactly. I love that too. It's a compliment, right? In American culture, when you say, "Oh, he has a good head on his shoulder," that's a compliment. Okay.
Right. Exactly.
Also to be logical, grounded, to be grounded. Mm-hmm.
I like that. Or you could say to be a planner.
Right. And again, these don't necessarily have to be opposites, sensitive and sensible. You could be both, but many times they don't occur in the same situation. I feel.
It can be hard to be sensible when you are being sensitive.
Yeah, often it can be. Not always, but sometimes. So
it can,
that brings us back to the question of, finding the right life partner and what we look for, right? So let's go through this little role play here, Michelle. And we're going to use both sensible and sensitive, and we're going to see, what words come out and how they're used for our listeners here. Okay. Here we go. So, Michelle, if you were not married, would you rather date someone who's sensible or sensitive?
Oof, great question. I would definitely rather date someone who is sensible.
Really? Why?
Well, I mean, we can't always have our head in the clouds, right? I would want someone who has a good head on his shoulders and thinks before he acts.
Yeah?
Well, sure, someone who's grounded. What about you?
Well, I'd much rather be with someone who's sensitive. Sensible people take all of the juice out of life with their logic and mechanical way of being in the world.
Seriously?
Yeah. I want someone who feels a lot and who wears his heart on his sleeve.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It can be attractive when people are in touch with their emotions, but just not all the time.
Yeah, I guess you're right. That was a cute little conversation.
It was cute.
That was good. So, Michelle, let's go back and let's see where we use these terms. So, what did I ask you first? I said, Michelle, if you're not, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. You said if I weren't married, you asked if I would rather date someone who is sensible or sensitive.
Good. So I'm asking you to choose between the two. And you said, I'd rather date someone who's sensible, right? And again, guys, just to remind you what we're talking about here, where the false friend comes in, the word sensible in Spanish, as far as I know, I hope we're right on this, means sensitive. Okay. So don't get confused there. Don't get confused, guys. Okay. So you said, really why? I said, we can't always have someone who has their head in the clouds. That's a good expression. What does that mean?
It's like in La La Land, la 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 la, not grounded, right? Somebody who's kind of always thinking their mind is somewhere else, right?
Their mind is someone else. And then you said, I'd want someone who has a good head on his shoulders.
Right.
Again, we talked about that's a compliment in our culture.
Right. And then I said someone who is grounded.
Yeah, grounded. Someone who is grounded. Yeah.
I like that.
You liked it. We talked about that a little bit earlier, right? And I disagreed. Like in my case, I wanted someone who is sensitive, right? I like this, someone who takes the juice out of life. Now that's not really an idiom, but it's just, I made this up. This juice out of life. Yeah, it's kind of cool. I actually feel that way. I really feel like when I'm around people who are very, very sensible, I almost feel like they're not fully living because they're protecting themselves by structuring everything and avoiding feeling anything. You know?
Yeah, I would say, yeah. Of course, the best is a happy medium between between the two, I guess.
Of course. Yep, exactly. And that's what we're looking for.
Everything in moderation.
Everything in moderation. So I think that was it in terms of the phrases we used. Did you see any others?
You said you want someone who feels a lot and wears his heart on his sleeve.
Yes, good. And we talked about that earlier. So that's good. So guys, I would be interested in hearing from you guys, when you're looking for a romantic partner, life partner, do you value someone who is sensible or sensitive or both, or what would you like? So come back to allearsenglish.com and type 498 in the search bar and leave us a comment. It would be interesting to hear from you guys. You can tell us what you think. And Michelle, what is the new cool thing we have going on at All Ears English these days?
Transcripts. And also, we also said that it can be attractive when people are in touch with their emotions. Sorry, forgot that one. But yes, transcripts. Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah, we now have the transcripts available, guys. The transcripts are back. So you can get a transcript from today's episode if you go over to allearsenglish.com/transcripts with an S on the end, TRANSCRIPTS. Okay, go on over there and get your transcript from today.
Yes.
Very good. Very good, Michelle. This has been fun. I feel like we could come back to this topic another day.
For sure. Okay. I like talking about character traits.
Yeah. And I think in the end, guys, be careful of those false friends because they will get you every time.
Yes.
Okay. All right, Michelle, I will see you soon.
Okay. Bye, Lindsay.
Bye. Thanks so much for listening to All Ears English. And if you need a 7 or higher on your IELTS exam to achieve your life vision, then our Insider Method can get you there. Start with our free video series masterclass. Get video 1 now at allearsenglish.com/INSIDER. And if you believe in connection, not perfection, then subscribe to our show on your phone or on your computer. See you next time.